It is cold as hell in here. I don't know what's up with my AC right now, but it is pretty freezing. Anyways, welcome back to the Fantasy Dome. We are here again with a ESPN mock draft. We're going to be doing wide receiver tier lists. Yeah, we've got all the wide receivers that aren't rookies this year, and we're basically just going to go down the board and see who we like at what spots, like who should be higher, who should be lower. So let's get started. And I think Jamar Chase, I think is just right for his ADP. He was the best wide receiver in fantasy last year. He's going to be in the top offense again. However, I do have a little bit of concern about his regression. Now, he had an unbelievable season, Triple Crown season last year, and that was on a contract year. Now he's gotten paid the big bucks, so will he replicate that amount of success, or will he regress a lot? I think there's more of a chance that he regresses. So the number one pick, I feel like it's right, but I wouldn't take him. Justin Jefferson, I also feel like, absolutely perfectly just right. Once again, these two are the best two receivers in the league, and I think it's not even close. They just do things that other guys just can't do. They can play with pretty much anyone at quarterback. And I know Justin Jefferson had kind of, I guess, like an off year it was last year, where he was still good, but he definitely had a couple games where it was like 4.7 or 8.4 in the last game. But overall, Justin Jefferson's still a top wide receiver. Now we get into our first wide receiver cluster. So we have Nakua, St. Brown, Lamb, Neighbors, Collins, Thomas Jr., and A.J. Brown. So let's rank them. So I think that the people who are first, the really underrated guys in this tier, Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's the first guy I'm taking, and I think it's not even close. I disagree. It's not even close because I also have Puka Nakua. Now, overall, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown and Puka Nakua are. Amon-Ra's the most consistent guy, but Puka Nakua, you know how Stafford loves his number one targets. And just that second half of the season when he isn't hurt is just unbelievable, man. And overall, I think that these two are the best guys. Not far behind, I think, is also CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb was that year was an absolute outlier. And I think that he still was a top 7 or 8, I guess 8, but he missed the last 2 games. So I'm going to call him a top 5 wide receiver when he was hurt a lot of the year, but he didn't have a quarterback. And yeah, he usually starts the season slow, but he didn't have the chance to really end out the season on a strong note. So I think that CeeDee Lamb is my third pick. If I'm in this area, I'm taking Amon-Ra, then Puka, and then CeeDee Lamb. And then are the guys that I think are just perfectly right. And I think the first one is Malik Neighbors. Once again, now is Russell Wilson throwing him the ball. I think that it'll be a lot easier for him to get more points than he did last season. I know he had a lot of targets last season, but I feel like he'll do more with them. And don't be surprised if Malik Neighbors is able to go for like 1,500 yards and like 12 touchdowns with Russell Wilson. With more of a refined deep ball, which is what Malik Neighbors is very good at, and very good at catching the deep ball, I think that there's nothing you could do wrong with him here. The next guy we're going to be talking about A.J. Brown, and I think that, A.J. Brown, one of the more consistent wide receivers in the league last year, and I do really like him. Once again, I think that I wouldn't take him over the first 4 players that I put here, but for an end of the first round type player who played pretty much like a top 5 wide receiver when he was healthy. Yes, he does have injury concern, but I'm taking him easily in this spot. And the last person I'm going to be talking about in this just right tier is going to be Nico Collins. When Nico Collins has been healthy, he has been an unbelievable wide receiver. Look at his first 5 games here. Then he missed a long time. Then he came back for the rest of the season and played well. My issue with Nico Collins, which is why I would normally have A.J. Brown over him, is because the Texans' offense could be very, very volatile. And this offense definitely could turn out to be a dud, and Nico Collins could have a bunch of games where they can't get the passing offense going and he has 2 receptions. But I think that he's super talented. I really like him at this position anyway, but I don't like him more than the other guys. And then finally at number 11, Brian Thomas Jr. What are we doing here? Brian Thomas Jr. is a very, very, very good receiver, and I know he had a really good end of the season. However, look at these target numbers. 11, 10. Didn't have a single game without double-digit targets, and that's with Mac Jones force-feeding him the ball. When Trevor Lawrence was his quarterback, he was still doing great, right? But he had a couple games where he had lower targets because Trevor Lawrence knows how to get the ball around a little bit more. And if you are putting Brian Thomas Jr. at the end of the first round, then why is Ladd McConkey a 4th rounder? I argue he had just as good of a last stretch of games as Brian Thomas Jr. has. But Brian Thomas Jr. is a 1st rounder and he's a 4th rounder. I just can't take a chance on him. I can't take a chance on Bryce Thomas Jr. If I'm taking any of these wide receivers, I'm taking any of these running backs. I am picking Brian Thomas Jr. over Christian McCaffrey and Devon Achane is absolute madness. And I feel like anyone who does that, what are we doing here, ESPN? Our next wide receiver is Drake London. I also think that Drake London is an absolutely perfect spot. He didn't struggle at the beginning of the year, but he was okay at the beginning of the year. And then he really turned it up towards the end of the year. And overall, once again, Drake London was just one of those guys that you can rely on. He was just solid. But it doesn't look like I can rely on him to be on this sheet. Is he not even on here? He might not be on here. Where are you, Drake London? There he is. Drake London's right here. I think that he's very solid. I think that he's very, he's an interesting prospect. And, picking him alongside guys like Breece Hall or the tight ends quarterbacks, all these running backs, I think that he is, he should be right below them. And he's kind of underrated based on points this season. I mean, look at these couple games that he's had. I mean, I think that Drake London is a solid receiver. And with Michael Penix, I feel like he could be even better. Now we get to Chris Godwin and Xavier Worthy. I think that Chris Godwin, I absolutely loved Chris Godwin last year. Unbelievably good pick. And I thought they used him correctly. But this year, I can't justify taking him in the middle of the 3rd round. He's just coming off of a major injury. And now he has something that he didn't have before. And that is real, legit competition. Mike Evans was injured for a lot of the season last year, especially when he was going off. You have Jalen McMillan, who is now one of their favorite red zone threats, as well as Bucky Irving, who just completely broke out last year. I think that Chris Godwin is a really, really good player, but I do not trust him, especially when there's so many mouths to feed on this offense. And then Xavier Worthy. I like Xavier Worthy here. Once again, kind of the same thing, middle of the 3rd round. He is just, once again, just a solid player for the Chiefs. And you see it in these last couple of games. I mean, he went completely nuclear. And there's always the chance that he just takes off and gets a 50-yard touchdown on you or a 60-yard touchdown. And you saw him in the Super Bowl. That's what Patrick Mahomes likes to do with him. He likes to send him on a streak and throw deep ball. So I kind of like him here. But, I mean, am I taking him over Drake London or Brian Thomas Jr.? Probably not, but I do like him here. Now we get to Devontae and DJ Moore. I think that Devontae Adams, once again, solid pick here. I think that overall the Rams offense will be good for him. He'll kind of play like Cooper Kupp in the middle of the season role, because at the end of the season he was just phased out completely. But I think that they went to this trouble to get Devontae, and they're going to use him alongside Puka. And if Puka gets hurt, Devontae easily becomes a number 1 wide receiver in fantasy. DJ Moore goes to bad. I know that the Bears' offense is going to be tragic. They always are. They have Rome Odunze to feed as well. I can imagine them getting another receiver, Cole Kmet. If this offense improves, I feel like DJ Moore's production will improve slightly, but it will be worse than last year. I mean, look at these last couple of games. He was doing well, but I feel like Odunze is going to start to really integrate himself into this lineup. And I'm not taking him over some of these guys down here. So now we go T. Higgins. I think that T. Higgins, he's okay. I want to put him at the bottom of just right because of his injury concern. He's been hurt like every single year, and he finally had his breakout year last year. And he still missed time. You know, I don't trust him, and even to stay healthy. Ladd McConkey is my first big steal. I think I've talked to death about this guy. Ladd McConkey is an unbelievable player, and he is severely underrated in pretty much every draft. Justin Herbert, he is going to be in a very good offense. He is going to be in the number 1 wide receiver position, and it's not even close. I think that no one else can come in. They could grab another guy in the second round probably, or maybe even the first round. I don't think that's going to take away Ladd's production. I think that he's the biggest steal in this load of wide receivers. And then Terry McLaurin, I'm going to put as, once again, just right. I feel like Terry McLaurin is really, really good, but they just added Deebo Samuel. I can see them adding another mouth to feed at running back. I think that Terry McLaurin, once again, is kind of that boom or bust player. He was really consistent last year, but as well, Week 17, we saw 1.5. Week 11, we saw 2 points. Week 1, we saw 3 points. If I'm taking a guy at the end of the 4th round, I am not, and especially with guys like T, Ladd, and Tyreek Hill behind him, I'm not going to take guys who can pretty much screw me. Like, it's like, these guys' worst games, Tyreek and Ladd, their worst games are like 5, there's a 4-pointer, there's 1 2-pointer right here, but, or like if we look at Ladd McConkey's, he had 1 7-pointer, but those are still fine numbers. A 2-pointer will lose you fantasy weeks, and overall, I think that Terry McLaurin is a good pick, and he's usually consistent, but I'm not calling him underrated by any standards. Who I am calling underrated is Tyreek Hill. There is nothing that could have gone worse for Tyreek Hill this year. And I know he just got another assault charge, and overall, Tyreek Hill is just still really, really good player. And if Tua stays healthy, and if Tyreek Hill also stays healthy and doesn't get arrested, I feel like they would be able to find their rhythm. People forget, this is the same guy that just 2 years ago went for like 1,700 yards. Yes, he had an off year, but I think he was dealing with a bunch of injuries, and he was also dealing with having Tyler Huntley as his quarterback. So I am very, very cool taking Tyreek Hill here. Now we have our next wide receiver conundrum. We have JSN, Garrett Wilson, Zay Flowers, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Mike Evans. Now, I think the easiest win right here, I think it's not even close. Garrett Wilson, huge, huge steal in the middle of the 5th round. Garrett Wilson was a top 10 wide receiver last year, playing with the corpse of Aaron Rodgers. I get Justin Fields isn't going to be as good as him, most likely, or maybe he's better. Who knows? This offense could be good. I think that Garrett Wilson is now the only mouth to feed. You don't have Devontae Adams anymore. So Garrett Wilson, I feel like, is really, really, really good player at this point. Same with JSN, not as good as Garrett Wilson is, but I still really, really, really like JSN at this point. Where are you, JSN? Are you here? DK, he might not be here. Okay, Jackson Smith and Jigba is Tyler Lockett for right now. So, because it doesn't look like he's here. But JSN, really, really, really solid player. And he had a breakout year last year. And once again, taking him in the middle of the 4th round, he only has room to grow and to prove even more. I think that he's a very big sleeper. And, he could be pretty decent. Now for the guys who are pretty much exactly where their ADP should be. And I think that's Mike Evans and Marvin Harrison Jr., wherever you are, man. Right here, Mike Evans and Marvin Harrison Jr. Once again, both these guys, red zone threats, pretty good. Route running they can get. I guess Marvin Harrison can't get too much separation, but he catches a lot of shit. So I think that Mike Evans and Marvin Harrison Jr. absolutely perfect and exactly what you want here. Very, very high upside in Marvin Harrison Jr. and picture of consistency with Mike Evans. And then with Zay Flowers in this tier, what are we doing? Zay Flowers I get he was a Pro Bowl receiver, but he was a 25th position ranked wide receiver, and we're taking him over guys like DK Metcalf, Cortland Sutton, Devonta Smith, Jordan Addison, Rashee Rice, Khalil Shakir. Look at Khalil Shakir. Look what he did. He was position ranked 37. Yes, he did miss an extra 2 games, but his average was pretty much just as good. What is it? He had 182.5, while Zay Flowers had 209.5. I think he was averaging about 12 points a game. Add that here, he's pretty much on the same level as Zay Flowers, except Zay Flowers is just criminally overrated by everyone. So I'm not taking Zay Flowers here. Jerry Jeudy at this position. I like Jerry Jeudy. He had a very, very good season last year. Really big bounce back season. I still can't take him here. I mean, once again, it's just a bad offense. And I think Jerry Jeudy is going to suffer in this offense. And it sucks because Jerry Jeudy was really electric and really good last year. But I think that it's not going to be as good as this year. Now, let's get to our next wide receiver cluster here. Sutton, DK, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, Chris Olave. This is the middle of the 6th round. And who would I take here? I think I'd easily take Cortland Sutton here. Cortland Sutton, once again, underrated as always. And he just had, once again, a breakout season, I guess. He's kind of old, but he did really, really well with Bo Nix. I know they have young upcoming wide receivers to get that job done. I think Cortland Sutton still has another year left in him. DK Metcalf, I feel like what this guy needed was a change of scenery. And DK Metcalf is just, once again, unbelievable player. And he just needed to change scenery. I mean, he struggled in Seattle, wasn't getting a lot of targets. He was in a loaded offense with 3 wide receivers and 2 running backs who needed touches. I think the Steelers will help him nicely, especially with whoever they get at quarterback. And then now it's time for the guys who I think that are perfect. Devonta Smith and Jalen Waddle. I think that's about it. Yep. I'll also put Chris Olave here. Where are you? Chris Olave. I think that these 3 guys, once again, all have upside, but also all have their issues. Chris Olave is always hurt, but when he's not hurt, he plays really well. Jalen Waddle had a bad season last year, but so did everyone in that Dolphins offense. Devonta Smith, while very good, lacks consistency that A.J. Brown does, which is why and consistency staying on the field. So that's that cluster. And then you have J-Mo Williams in Detroit, who is pretty good. I take him just right. Once again, he could break off those massive touchdowns, like the ones that you have. Where's his big game? It must have been in the playoffs. But once again, I mean, 5 for 143, an average of 30 yards per reception, 31 yards per reception, 40. Yeah, you can't take this guy off your radar, especially if they're the teams. And he's a good depth piece, He definitely could be. Now, here's where it gets interesting. I'm going to start from the bottom in this cluster of 5 wide receivers. And I think that this is the middle of the 7th round. And I think that there's no one here that I wouldn't take a risk on here. However, here are some players that overall I think that I do like, but not as much. Khalil Shakir, once again, really, really solid player. I'd put him on the same level as Zay Flowers, and Zay Flowers would be drafted 2 rounds. If you want Zay Flowers, draft Khalil Shakir 2 rounds later. It's so much easier. Then you get Calvin Ridley. Once again, he's going to be coming in with a new quarterback. He was pretty decent last year. I feel like he could be a sleeper, but I'm just not ready to commit to that because the Titans' offense is so pitiful. And the last player we're going to put in here is George Pickens. And we're going to keep Pickens in here because his off-the-field tantrums are something that definitely need to be monitored. However, his on-the-field production is good, but he's once again, Steelers' quarterback situation is very up in the air, and you also have DK Metcalf, who's now taking touches from him. So, overall, I feel like it's a risky pick that I'm not taking. Did I put them in bad? No, George Pickens should be in mid. Sorry, that was my apologies. Underrated goes to Jacoby Myers every single year. I mean, this guy stays on the field, is a top 20 wide receiver, so he will be a starter for you. And the Raiders have Geno Smith now. Yes, they have Brock Bowers too, but their number one wide receiver option is so obviously Jacoby Myers that I'm taking him 10 times out of 10 at this position. Unless Rashee Rice is on the board. Now, what Rashee Rice did at the end of 2 years ago, before he decided to be an idiot, and the beginning of last year, Rashee Rice was the number one wide receiver in fantasy, and it wasn't even close. Look at the target numbers, the touchdowns. He was unbelievable. And then against the Chargers, blew his knee out. I am not worried about Rashee Rice losing touches to Xavier Worthy. I feel like they could be the best 1-2 punch in the league. Travis Kelce is still falling off a cliff. And so Rashee Rice is going to be, when Xavier Worthy's not open deep, he's going to be the guy that Mahomes goes to. I think that he's still young, he has room to develop, and it doesn't look like he's going to get banned by the league. So, big steal here at the middle of the 7th round. Cooper Kupp, I think that he is definitely still underrated. Being the number 2 option in the Seattle Seahawks offense is not bad. And once again, he's kind of like an old reliable for the teams. And I know he did bad at the end of last year, but I'm super cool taking him in the middle of the 8th round, taking a shot on him. Now it's time for all of these guys. So I think that the people who are in the same tier, it should be Rashid Shaheed. Wherever you are, you're right here. Rashid Shaheed, once again, just a very, very solid player and was really, really good for the Saints last year until he got hurt, but I'm not taking him over any of these other guys. The next guy I'm going to take on this list is Rome Odunze. I did say that I think that Rome Odunze could get more involved in this offense. However, last year's struggles were just too much for me, and I can't take him any higher than this round. Brandon Ayuk, I think I'm also going to place in this tier. Injury concerns, he was bad before, and I always thought that he was not worth the amount of money that he got because he just made a lot of touchdowns happen. And when you actually ask him to be the number 1 receiver, he leaves a lot to be desired, unlike Juwan Jennings does. This guy, top 25 wide receiver last year, and that was like with 2 games out, plus a couple of bad games here when he wasn't fully integrated. But as soon as Debo went out, I think that Juwan Jennings really, really, really picked it up. And speaking of Debo Samuel, he's going to be the number 2 option on Washington Commanders, a Super Bowl contender. And we saw what happens when he plays for a Super Bowl contender. He actually tries. And so I'm willing to take a risk on Debo right here, even though it was bad earlier. I found the thing for JSN. I don't know how I was so blind. But once again, I think that's the last person we're talking about, besides Stephon Diggs, who I'm also putting in underrated. I just saw a workout of Stephon Diggs coming back from his ACL injury. Holy crap, does he look good coming back from that ACL injury. already running like not crisp, but he's running and he's doing pretty decent drills. And it looks like he's coming back super duper well. And being the number 1 target on the Patriots now, I'm taking him here, I think, easily. Now we move down a little bit more and we get into the last group of players I think I'm going to talk about today, besides the sleepers at the end. Jaden Reed, Michael Pittman, Hollywood, Keon Coleman, Adam Thielen. So starting from the bottom, I think that Hollywood Brown, no way. Hollywood Brown is not going to get as many touches. If you want the route running he has, you want Rashee Rice. If you want the deep threat he has, you have Xavier Worthy. So I think that overall, I'm not taking any of these guys. As of right now, Adam Thielen is the only competent receiver on that Panthers team, so I'm taking him at number 1. I guess you can count Jalen Coker, but I'm taking him right here. Kind of the same deal with Jaden Reed and Michael Pittman Jr. And I think that these 3 guys are just, once again, they're the number 1s, but they aren't clear. I mean, Adam Thielen's old. Jaden Reed is the number 1, but there's so many people who gain touches on that team. And then Pittman has Anthony Richardson. Then you have Keon Coleman, who I also really want to put in just right, but I also want to put in underrated because he's a second-year receiver. He was really good last year. His route running was crisp, super well. And, overall, I think that Keon Coleman could be a guy to look out for this year. Now, let's go a little bit farther down. And we're not going to do the tier list for the rest of these. I'm just going to talk about each of these guys a little bit. Keenan Allen, not in the team. Josh Downs could be a sleeper again. I mean, he was a top 35 wide receiver, and he missed 3 games. You have Kirk, who I think could be also a steal. I'll actually put him on here because I think Christian Kirk is here. Or is he not? He was on the Jags last year. I think he could be a steal here. If he stays healthy, he's going to be the number 2 wide receiver on this Texans team. And he is at a very low price. So I'll take Christian Kirk here, as well as I think Jalen McMillan, super underrated. Ricky Pearsall, Mims. None of these other guys I really care about. And I think that's pretty much all I want to do here. So overall, I think that this is my tier list, and let me know what you guys would change about it. And once again, please leave a like and subscribe if you like these videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.